What do you think is going to happen to the world? Just exactly what it deserves. Don't you believe in the operation of the moral law? Have you ever asked, what is the root of money? Money is a tool of exchange which can't exist unless there are goods produced and men able to produce them. Is the material shape of the principle that men who wish to deal with one another must deal by trade and give value for value. It is not a tool of the moochers who claim your product by tears or the looters who take it from you by force. Money is made possible by the men who produce. When you accept money in payment for your effort, you do so on the conviction that you will exchange it for the product of the effort of others. It is not the moochers or the looters who give value to money. Not an ocean of tears nor all the guns in the world can transform those pieces of paper in your wallet into the bread you will need to survive tomorrow. It is your statement of hope that somewhere in the world around you there are men who will not default on that moral principle. Have you ever looked at the root of production? Take a look at an electrical generator and dare tell yourself that it was created by the muscular effort of unthinking brutes. Try to grow a seed of wheat without the knowledge left to you by men who had to discover it for the first time. Try to obtain your food by means of nothing but physical motions, and you'll learn that man's mind is the root of all the goods produced and all the wealth that has ever existed on earth. Before it can be mooched or looted, made by the effort of every honest man, each to the extent of his own ability, an honest man knows that he can't consume more than he has produced. He rests on the axiom that every man is the owner of his mind and his effort. He allows no power to prescribe the value of your effort except the voluntary choice of the man who is willing to trade you his effort in return. He permits you to obtain for your goods and your labor that which they are worth to the men who would buy them, but no more. He permits no deals except those to mutual benefit by the unforced judgment of the traders. Money demands of you the recognition that men must work for their own benefit, not for their injury, for their gain, not their loss, the recognition that they are not beasts of burden born to carry the weight of your misery, that you must offer them values, not wounds, that the common bond among men is not the exchange of suffering, but the exchange of goods. It demands that you sell not your weakness to men's stupidity, but your talent to their reason. It demands that you buy not the shoddiest they offer, but the best your money can find. And when men live by trade, with reason, not force, as their final arbiter, it is the best product that wins, the best performance, the man of best judgment and highest ability, and the degree of a man's productiveness is the degree of his reward. Only the man who does not need it is fit to inherit wealth. Money is a living power that dies without its root. The verdict you pronounce on your source of livelihood is the verdict you pronounce upon your life. If the source is corrupt, you have damned your own existence. Did you get your money by fraud, by pandering to men's vices or stupidity, by catering to fools in hope of getting more than your ability deserves, by lowering your standards, by doing work you despise for purchasers you scorn? Not an achievement, but a reminder of shame. So long as men live together on earth and need means to deal with one another, their only substitute, if they abandon money, is the muzzle of a gun. But money demands of you the highest virtues if you wish to make it or keep it. Men who have no courage, pride, or self-esteem, men who have no moral sense of their right are not willing to defend it as they defend their life. Then you will see the rise of the men of the double standard, the men who live by force, yet count on those who live by trade to create the value of their looted money, the men who are the hitchhikers of virtue. In a moral society, these are the criminals, and the statutes are written to protect you against them. But when a society establishes criminals by right and looters by law, men who use force to seize the wealth of the disarmed victims, such looters believe it safe to rob defenseless men once they've passed a law to disarm them. But their loot becomes the magnet for other looters who get it from them as they got it. And then the race goes, not to the ablest at production, but to the most ruthless at brutality. When force is the standard, the murderer wins over the pickpocket, and then society vanishes in a spread of ruins and slaughter. Do you wish to know whether that day is coming? Money is a barometer of a society's virtue. When you see that trade is done not by consent but by compulsion, when you see that in order to produce you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing, when you see that money is flowing to those who deal not in goods but in favors, when you see that men get richer by graft and by pull than by work, and your laws do not protect you against them but protect them against you, when you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming a self-sacrifice, you may know that your society is doomed. It is so noble a medium, it does not compete with guns and it does not make terms with brutality. It will not permit a country to survive as half property, half loot. Whenever destroyers appear among men, they start by destroying money. For money is men's protection and the base of a moral existence. Destroyers seize gold and leave to its owners a counterfeit pile of paper. This kills all objective standards and delivers men into the arbitrary power of an arbitrary setter of values. Gold was an objective value, an equivalent of wealth produced. Paper is a mortgage on wealth that does not exist, backed by a gun aimed at those who are expected to produce it. Paper is a check drawn by legal looters upon an account which is not theirs, upon the virtue of the victims. Watch for the day when it bounces, marked, account overdrawn. When you have made evil the means of survival, do not expect men to remain good. Do not expect them to stay moral and lose their lives for the purpose of becoming the fodder of the immoral. Do not expect them to produce when production is punished and looting rewarded. Do not ask, who is destroying the world? You stand in the midst of the greatest achievement of the greatest productive civilization and wonder why it is crumbling around you. Well, you're damning its lifeblood, as the savages did before you, and was always seized by looters of one brand or another whose names changed, but whose methods remained the same, to seize wealth by force and to keep the producers bound, demeaned, defamed, and deprived of honor. Comes from a time when wealth was produced by the labor of slaves. Slaves who repeated the motions once discovered by somebody's mind and left unimproved for centuries. So long as production was ruled by force and wealth was obtained by conquest, there was little to conquer. Yet, through all the centuries of stagnation and starvation, men exalted the looters as aristocrats of the sword, as aristocrats of birth, as aristocrats of the bureau, and despised the producers as slaves, as traders, as shopkeepers, as industrialists. To the glory of mankind there was, for the first and only time in history, a country, and I have no more reverent tribute to pay to America, for this means a country of reason, justice, freedom, production, achievement. For the first time, man's mind were set free, and there were no fortunes made by conquest, but only fortunes made by work. And instead of swordsmen and slaves, there appeared the real makers of wealth, the greatest worker, the highest type of human being, the self-made man. If you ask me to name the proudest distinction of Americans, I would choose, because it contains all the others, the fact that they were the people who hold the essence of human morality. No other language nor nation has ever used these words before. Men had always thought of wealth as a static quantity to be seized, begged, inherited, shared, looted, or obtained as a favor. Americans were the first to understand that wealth has to be created. Yet these were the words for which Americans were denounced by the rotted cultures of the looters' continents. Now the looters' credo has brought you to regard your proudest achievements as a hallmark of shame, your prosperity as guilt, your greatest men as blackguards, as the product and property of muscular labor, the labor of whip-driven slaves like the pyramids of Egypt.